Polishing your essay makes all the difference between an acceptance and a rejection letter. So by the end of this video, you will have a fully polished essay ready for submission, and let's get to it. So before you polish your essay, however, you need to do something called a rewrite check. If your essay is not on the right topic, you need to rewrite your essay. So in a previous video, we talked about how you can write your Common App essay in 15 minutes and how you can choose one of your activities, or actually two of your activities, to write about in that Common App essay. However, for those who haven't seen that video, I will give a list of things that you should not include in your essays. Number 1, don't include any steamy content or innuendos. Number 2, no privileged content, like let's say you travel to another country. Don't say that you're rich if you're rich. Number 3, no love stories. Nobody cares about those. Number 4, no sob stories, because you don't want the admission officers in tears after reading your essay. That's not a good first impression. Number 5, nothing that will ruin your reputation as an 18th century student, okay? So with that out of the way, we can now talk about if your essay has enough information. You see, college essays need to be both concise but still provide the information that the college admission officers need. Now, you might say that might be easier said than done. So right now, right this second, we will be going over your essay and we will talk about whether or not some things need to be expanded or not. Don't worry about the word count for now, because we will cut down on this information that you added into the document. However, you will notice at the very end of this video, when you finish your essay, how much of a difference this makes. When you add information into your essay and then take out the unnecessary information, you essentially polish your essay. This is what it's all about. Also, the lights are gone. Nico, did you take them? Nico, did you take the lights? Okay, so back on the topic of your essay, let's now expand your essay to make sure that all the information the admission officers needed is included in your essay. So I will give you 2 different templates. One of them is for you to compare each, and I mean each individual sentence on your essay, and the second is a bird's eye view to make sure that the overall flow of your essay is good. And you might be wondering, why is flow important? It's an essay. And I can just tell you now that if you don't have a good flow, the admission officers will be distracted and they probably will not read your essay very thoroughly because of how clunky it feels. If you don't quite understand what I just said, don't worry about it, just continue to follow what I'm saying. You'll eventually understand, but all you need to know is that this will improve your essay. That's all you need to know. So to improve the flow of your essays, your sentence needs to do one of these 2 things. Number 1, it needs to give some information about activity A/B. Number 2, your sentence needs to support some adjective that describes you. With that first template out of the way, however, we need to talk about something else that will hurt your application, will hurt your essays if you do not do this. So if in your essays you have more than 2 activities, you need to shorten your range. You need to shorten your area that the essay covers to only 2 activities, 2 different topics, because if you go over that, your essay will be too broad. And just trust me on this, maximum have only 2 activities. So now, before moving into the next template, which is a bird's eye view of your entire essay to make sure that it flows correctly, we need to talk about 2 different vocabularies. Number 1, when I mention paragraphs, I do not mean indentations. I only mean groups of sentences that can form a paragraph. So that paragraph talks about this thing, the second paragraph talks about another thing. Furthermore, within each paragraph, there will be supporting sentences inside of them, and if some of those sentences have relation to each other, I will call those grouped sentences. So just a recap, since that was a lot of information, each paragraph will have multiple grouped sentences, and those grouped sentences support the point of the paragraph. So let's get into the paragraph. First paragraph. This is your intro paragraph. It's an introduction of who you are. In my previous video, the 15-minute video, I described that you need to have a story here. You need to hook the readers in. And that is the first point. Are you hooking your readers? If you're not using the story method, that's fine. You still need to hook your readers though. You need to tell a story here, but it has to be an interesting story. So that means you have to use this format. Number 1, hook. Number 2, sentence with conflict that can be compared to a second scenario that will come in a later paragraph. You can also have a flashback here if that is your vibe. The third part is you need to make sure you write about your reaction to this scenario. Preferably, it's a human, natural reaction to the situation. For example, if there's this kid that you needed to babysit and they constantly make you step on Legos, like you will feel annoyed. This is a normal reaction. Bad example, but it shows that you're a human. That's the point of this paragraph, is to show that you are human. You need to spend a significant amount of word count, not like 600, maybe more like 300 to 400 on this part of the essay, solely because you'll have a lot of space later on to talk about, to analyze this situation. What is important in the first paragraph is you need to throw in all your creativity into it. Now, previously I did talk about why creativity was overrated and you don't quite need that in essays. But in this particular scenario, what you are doing is you are dragging the readers into your hell hole. That's the horrible. You're hooking them. You're really making them invested in your story so that they pay attention to what you're going to say in the following paragraphs. In my opinion, remember the golden rule of anything you write in these story-like essays. And officially it's called Cherkov's gun, but essentially it means if you're going to write about a gun, you need to use that gun sometime inside of the story. Now, this is not a plot. This is not a movie plot. This is just your essay. But I think that if you follow this rule, you won't go off the path and you won't start blabbering because you do not have the space to blabber. You donut. Second paragraph, you need to go into expansive detail about how you change the situation, or rather how much you learned to change the situation. However, it's very easy to fall into the trap right here in this paragraph of just telling and not showing. It's very easy to fall into this trap. Essentially, if you have a sentence directly tell you, for example, I am an ambitious leader as shown by project ABC, you need to take that out because you are just telling, you are not showing. Anyone can say that. You need to have those details to support your claim. And that's why you need to put that sentence after those details supporting your claim. Your grouped sentences should say supporting details first. Then you should follow with explaining what that means. For example, you can say, I kept working on my intonation, practicing declensions and conjugations, trying everything I can to make myself more fluent in the language. Then you follow up, I had never worked harder in my life, but it was still futile. I had still lost. Right? So the first part is describing what you have done. It's showing, right? It's not telling. And then you follow up with that sentence of explaining what it is that you have been trying to do this whole time. So to recap, you need to show, then tell, not show, don't tell. I've seen people give me advice that were saying like, show, don't tell. That's horrible advice. That's wrong advice, because if you just show, don't tell, if you don't tell, like, they won't understand what you just showed them. Like, what you're doing right here is you're giving evidence to prove that what you're saying is accurate. Like, if you don't tell them at the very end what all these details are about, you're leaving them to their own devices. You're leaving them to make their own inferences. You don't want them to do that. You need to put everything on their plate. Just divide up all the portions of the plate. Like, this part's the meat of the plate. If you just tell the mission officers what you want, what you are, without giving any support, it's exactly like saying, oh, you're so stupid that I have to spoon feed it to you. Like, human beings naturally want to make their own conclusions, right? So essentially what you're doing is, when you have the evidence, in their minds, they're subconsciously already making prediction about who you are. And in the following sentence, when you explain that in clear black and white words, then they're like, I was right, even though they probably weren't right. But because of that role, what's that psychological role where it's like you think that you're right? Because like, yeah, it's like shoving a living rabbit into Nico's face. Like, she is going to want to kill me. But Jian, why are you interrupting? Wait, who let you out? Nico? Moving on to the third paragraph. Now, in here, I wrote that you need to have a secondary story, a different scenario that isn't like the first scenario, that you can show that you have changed in your reaction to this scenario. So as this is in the same format as the first paragraph, editor, throw on the text on the screen. Note that your reaction this time, however, is not a human reaction. You need to become Jianj. What you want to do is you need to become superhuman. For example, you can say, I was daycaring this kid. Daycaring, and I realized how much my heritage has taught me about patience. Now, if you say this in the very beginning, they'll just discard your application. They'll just discard your essay, because it's like, you can't just do that, you know? But if you say this at the very end, after this whole journey then that works, because they're having that confirmation bias. That's the word. Thank you, Nico, for telling me. That definitely works that way. Yes. Think of the previous paragraphs as your training arc, right? This is the final boss. This is the final goal. This is where you effortlessly beat the final boss. This is the whole product. It's the fruit of labor. At this point, when the college admission officers have read your whole essay, like they spent a solid 5 minutes reading your whole essay and they get to this point, they'll feel that satisfaction of, yes, this kid did it. Every teacher feels like that. So you need to do this part. In this last part, you need to describe how the stuff you learned in situation 1 applied to situation 2 and how you effortlessly defeated the final goal. Know the difference between paragraph 2 and 3. In paragraph 2, you need to talk about the stuff you did to improve yourself. In paragraph 3, you're talking about how those things that you did change your reaction to the situation number 2. It's a distinct difference, but now we can move on to the next step, and that is relating the first and the second situation, since what you have right now might not be connected, so we will try to improve that flow right now. So with that out of the way, we can now check to see if your two situations, if your two different activities are linked, if they are in the right order, because as with all events, there is a chronological order that events occur in, right? So one activity must logically lead to another activity. The way that you can make sure your paragraph flows is just to make sure that that continuity of time is there. If you show like, oh, a year has passed, those simple 4 words, a year has passed, will give that chronological order, will make sure that flow is present. Now, before we move on though, there is something that's very, very dangerous that you need to watch out for, and this is another pitfall that commonly happens. You need to go back to the hook of your essay, and with a critical eye, read that story, read the hook, and see if it's actually a good hook, if it's actually a good essay, because on the first pass, you might think, this is a great essay, man. On the second pass, you'll realize how bad the story is. So this is a very, very important step. You need to check to see if it's actually entertaining. If it's boring, you're essentially just dragging them across the dirt for a third of your essay because of how boring it is. In more apparent terms though, this means if your conflict is shallow, if your conflict doesn't mean anything, the story is not going to be interesting. If there's not much at stake, nobody wants to read the story. Remember that this is not a stop story though. You just need to have more at stake. Okay, now with all of that content done, we can now start stripping. So to strip away everything that's not necessary, let's do this thing called compact practice that I want to do with you right now. I'm going to give this example to you, and I want you to pause the video and come up with your own compact sentence from those sentences, that example that I'm going to give you. The reason is because you will need to have to do this yourself. There's no way that I can look through the screen and see your paper and give you exact advice, so you will need to do this yourself. However, hopefully with this example, it can help you in some way. So again, pause after I read this. So, even though I discovered I was not as strong as I thought I was, I continued to train myself to eat more and more food. Although the journey was difficult, I went to the local grocery store every day, working to earn money to buy enough hot dogs to practice my eating skills. However, I personally believe that due to these reasons, my participation in the National Spaghetti Eating Competition was greatly impacted by my experience and training. So to simplify this, you need to ask yourself, what is the point of this sentence? What is this sentence doing? Is this sentence really needed? So let's go through it line by line. Even though I discovered that says nothing. I don't need to know about that. I was not as strong as I thought I was. Okay, we have something going on here. So what if I say I was not as strong, or I was not strong? That's even better. So if I say I was not strong, then let me continue. I continue to train myself to eat more and more food. Now, more and more food, that's just a waste of space, right? Like, you don't need to put that. But I don't quite like this. You see, there's this other thing called action verbs that you need to include inside your essays. And here, there isn't really much action words. You only said, I continued to train myself, right? That's not as good as, for example, I persisted in training myself. These action verbs really change the tone of the passage. So right now we currently have I was not strong and I persisted in training myself. Now, let's move on. Although the journey was difficult, again, this is not needed. Every journey is difficult. I went to the local grocery store every day. This just seems melodramatic. Working to earn money to buy enough hot dogs to practice my eating skills. This doesn't quite makes sense because first you're talking about how you didn't think you're strong enough, so you trained yourself to eat more food. But although the journey was difficult, that part doesn't make sense. It's just like a gut feeling, right? I can't explain exactly why it doesn't make sense, but it just feels uncomfortable. So if I phrase it differently, if I phrase it like, I was not strong, but I persisted in training myself by eating tens of dozens of hot dogs. Right, that makes sense. Okay, you're eating so many hot dogs. Well, the logical question then is, how do you fund for your expensive hobby? So due to not having money, I worked daily at the local grocery store, just barely making enough money to buy the materials for my expensive hobby. Now compare these two different versions and tell me which one's better. Just continuing on here, it says, however, I personally believe that due to my reasons, my participation in the national spaghetti eating competition was greatly impacted by my experience and training. That is so wordy. So I rephrased that to this. However, the moment I won the national spaghetti eating competition, notice how I say I won, right? It's much more of an action verb than saying I participated, my participation, right? So I won the national spaghetti eating competition. I knew that my experiments and my community, you see, it's not just all about me, it's also about my community, that was what led me to succeed. So this second version is so much stronger than the first one, and that is what you need to aim to do in your essay right now. So pause this video and go ahead and edit your essay. So last but not least is looking at the syntax of your essay, which just means grammar. People like to be formal. So just make sure your grammar is correct. Your friends, your teachers, they can do this part for you. In the previous sections, however, your teachers will not do any of that for you. Let me just tell you straight up. Rarely do I see teachers actually do those steps because of how intensive it is. And this is just like a gut feeling, right? If you don't have the gut feeling, it's very hard for you to make these essays, to perfect your essays, to polish your essays. So you need to build up that polishing. You need to build up your skills in that particular trade. Also, just last tip, check that you wrote the right name of the college because I accidentally wrote the wrong name once. Good thing I didn't submit that, but just check to make sure you have the right college. And that is it. I am so dead. I'm never doing one of these ever again. It's been 30 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. It is the end of this video. And hopefully I will see you when I start doing my vlogs. Probably not likely. I still have like 2 to 3 more videos to do. But I will see you in the next video, whatever video that is. Don't subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.